You know, it's interesting to see the evolution of people's understanding of why Khaenri'ah was destroyed by the gods change over time. And while yes, that obviously is the natural thing to do when more information comes to light, it's still funny nonetheless to watch the complete 180 from Khaenri'ah was unruly crushed by the evil Celestia to Celestia had to crush them to stop the cataclysm, when in fact, none of these descriptions really capture what went wrong here. And while we're still far away from a complete picture of what really occurred there 500 years ago, we do have a rather sophisticated framework of ideas that lets us draw some rather interesting conclusions that both pit the blame on no one and everyone. It really just depends on where your moral compass is, so I'm particularly excited for that reason to see what you guys have to say in regards to this, just because some of you niggas have the wildest moral compasses I've ever seen. The shit I read sometimes. So without further ado, let's talk Khaenri'ah. Khaenri'ah was a nation that was founded thousands of years ago. While we still don't exactly know when, it was around the time that Solomon Anir fell, with a scribe writing, quotes, "I've heard of people who are building a new nation without gods. Perhaps they'll have the power to stand against this world." The nation must be at least 3,700 years old, given that's when the first ruin machines are noted to have started appearing. So in actuality, they were probably founded around 4,000 years ago. As the scribe notes, Khaenri'ah was always created with the intention of independence from the gods. This could also be why the nation was underground. Due to them being underground, however, natural life was few and far between, so instead the people of Khaenri'ah started creating life using an alchemical process known as the arts of Khemia. As the nation carried on, they created many manner of machinery crafted for the purposes of war. They gave these machines code names such as field tiller to mask their true nature, with the old saying stating, quotes, "The land is not to be tilled with farming tools, but rather to be fought for with steel and blood." Given Khaenri'ah did not wage war against any of the other nations of the Seven, it's thought the reason they created all these war machines was to one day challenge the gods. The thing that made Khaenri'ah unique, obviously, was their impiety. However, it seemed like they had a reason for this, for they somehow came to believe that the gods of Teyvat and Celestia itself were not natural to Teyvat and usurped the world from whatever came before them. How they came to know this is not known, but while they seemed to believe this, they had no proof, which is why they ordered 3 Khaenri'ah diplomats to sneak into Khemia and steal a book rumored to exist called Before Sun and Moon, which was said to detail what the world was like before the arrival of the gods. They'd fail, however, and be thrown in prison instead. Fast forward a whole lot of years, and that takes us to King Irmin's rule, which would prove to be the most consequential for the nation. As king, Irmin would authorize the use of forbidden knowledge to enhance the machinery in what looked like a rapid buildup of their army for the purposes of, quote, breaking the shackles imposed by this world's laws. Using forbidden knowledge was unpopular with some in Khaenri'ah, namely a royal mage named Theyre, who implored King Irmin to stop using secrets from beyond the veil, but to no avail. That rhyme master, huh? Eventually, it would seem Khaenri'ah's use of forbidden knowledge, abyssal powers, and the misuse of the art of Khemia would catch up with them and unleash a devastating cataclysm all over Teyvat. Each nation would be affected in their own way, but mainly with abyssal monsters created by Rheindoder using the art of Khemia running wild, and Khaenri'ah being the hub of it all. This forced Celestia to respond, who then recalled the Archons and forced them to assist in fighting the Abyss. Tungihala, which had been hit especially hard by the cataclysm due to their proximity to Khaenri'ah, saw both Greater Lord Rukkhadevata and Jiriyah die there. Eventually, Celestia and the gods would then turn their attention to Khaenri'ah, destroying the nation and cursing its inhabitants for their sins. This pretty much sums up all we know about Khaenri'ah right now. However, there are obviously many missing gaps in its history and some important questions we just don't know the answer to, like why it was founded, how did they come to learn the truth of the gods, was it a cataclysm or an attempted coup, what was the thing that actually started the cataclysm, what was their level of involvement with the Abyss, how did they summon the Traveler's Sibling, and what exactly was the Traveler's Sibling involvement in the state of affairs of Khaenri'ah. And most importantly, why was Celestia content with letting Khaenri'ah exist for as long as they did, despite the fact that they did not give a flying fuck about that island, man? I mean, these are all pretty important questions that I'd imagine we're not getting answers to anytime soon. 3 years, the plot's barely moved. Anyway, it seems like the nation of Khaenri'ah's sins all tie into the idea of hubris, apotheosis, overreaching and challenging divine authority. Khaenri'ah has been described as the pride of humanity by its inhabitants, but if there's one thing ancient stories have taught us, it's that hubris is often severely punished by the divine, and there are consequences to mortals who try and overreach their authority. Prometheus granted humans the stolen divine power of fire, which caused Zeus to have Prometheus tied to a boulder and have his liver eaten by an eagle for all of eternity. The Tower of Babel tells of humans who once tried to build a tower so high it touched the heavens, which angered God, who then destroyed the tower. Gilgamesh was a warrior who sought immortality to transcend his mortal limits, only to understand later why they existed in the first place. There are quite literally hundreds of stories throughout history that deal with these themes, and it seems like Khaenri'ah's case is no different. The people of Khaenri'ah tried to surpass the gods, and they may have even succeeded, it seems, based on the description of the Aeon Blight Drake, which states, quote, "This dragon-shaped combat machine is a being that inspires fear, much like the lord that once ruled these lands. It's said that the now destroyed realm once sought forbidden knowledge and attempted to create perpetual motion machines that could match or even surpass primordial life forms. This mysterious, tireless mechanical monstrosity seems to be proof that they did indeed reach the heights that mortals should never have attained. Their goal of surpassing primordial life forms and the fact that they reached heights mortals should never have achieved is akin to the mortal arrogance the Sustainer spoke of.
The arrogation of mankind ends now.
Celestia has long since been unkind to humans who try and look beyond them, as the book The History of the Decline and Fall of Rumeria states, "This heaven-blessed reign lasted countless generations until people grew tired of their inscrutable eternity. Their offspring ceased to listen to the oracles. Instead, they desired things never promised to them by the divine, trying to break free from their fates. Enraged by their behavior, heaven sent gigantic waves to smash the settler cities. 100 days of rain came afterward, and the roaring tides drowned all sin and arrogation, and thus were the early peoples brought to an end." Humans challenging the gods is nearly always met with hellfire and brimstone due to how such an action undermines the gods' authority. As dainsleif calls Khaenri'ah the pride of humanity, it's easy to see how such an action came about as a result of hubris. One of the cardinal sins, excessive pride, results in a loss of moral humility, which in the eyes of the gods is important to ensure for a number of different reasons, be it cultivating virtues, fostering relationships, or a simple respect for the divine order. While I cannot speak to the culture of Khaenri'ah and whether they lacked all those values, we know they lacked one, which was evidently the most important one: a respect for the divine order. Impious since their founding, Khaenri'ah is hinted at by dainsleif as to have tried rebelling against the gods.
There's nothing special about gods anyway. It's just my opinion, but a word of advice. Always be on your guard when around gods. You shouldn't place too much trust in them. But at the same time, don't go too far in the opposite direction. Don't go trying to overthrow them or hunt them down, even if the god in question is your sworn enemy.
Don't trust them and don't hunt them. That's some awkward advice. Does Dane hate the Seven, or is he protecting them?
Lest I repeat the failings of my forebears, I will tell you one final fact.
Huh? What fact?
The destruction of the nation of Khaenri'ah by the gods is the reason the Abyss Order now seeks to destroy the nations watched over by the Seven.
They in turn were punished, and it seems like the survivors, while still lacking respects, acknowledge the gods' powers. However, that's not to say they all see it like this, as a lot of the Abyss Order is made up of Khaenri'ahs who are committing the exact same sins they did before, attempting to overthrow the gods, apotheosis, and creating a god even. One last action cementing the Khaenri'ahs' fate, however, was the creation of life through the arts of Khemia. A lot of the monsters pouring out from the Abyss were created by Rheindoter using the arts of Khemia. Whether she did this intentionally or not is not known. Celestia punished a god for modifying life, so what chance did a human have when confronted for creating life? The creation of life is a divine power, and when humans wield divine power, it can lead to a breakdown of authority and thus chaos. But not just any chaos, a type of chaos that might even be a catalyst for the sovereigns to rise once again. As it stands right now, the laws that everyone seems to hate that Celestia has set up seem to be done to make Teyvat at the very least habitable for humanity. So couple this with the fact that a lot of Gold's monsters were imbued with abyssal power which would destroy humanity, we can see why Celestia felt the need to go cowabunga on Khaenri'ah. As it stands right now, Khaenri'ah's tale is certainly not something unique to the annals of history, as we've seen many acts of divine retribution against the sins of pride, overreaching, and impiety. However, this story is unique in that one can argue Celestia are fake gods due to them being usurpers, but then you could also say, but they're still the gods of you at the very least, because you wouldn't exist without, so it's a whole thing. However, unfortunately for Khaenri'ahs, it's really simple. The Heavenly Principles wields all the power, and as they themselves recognize, he who wields the power controls the land.